if women's cricket wants to continue gaining momentum and grabbing attention of the audience, then they have to work harder at the skills aspect of the game. It cannot be based on skewing playing conditions. And so if we want to stay relevant, let's work on improving those skills. I spent 11 years of my initial life in Kenya. Soccer was massive. And if there was a sport there that I could play, I will play it. And so the one day there was, boys playing cricket at school. And I said, hey, I want to join this. And they said, well, girls don't play cricket. And for me, that was a major setback because I'm like, what do you mean they don't play? I play all these other sports. Women play all these other sports. What do you mean by women don't play this sport? Cricket is getting back into the Olympics after breakdancing. It just made absolutely no sense to me.
All right, so Monali, how was your trip to Peru?
My trip to Peru was quite outstanding. The scenery is absolutely breathtaking. I didn't expect Machu Picchu to actually be as amazing as it was. And to think that these civilizations existed thousands of years ago and without the technology that we have today up in the mountains, pretty impressive stuff. Yeah.
So that's really cool. Yeah, like I've been watching lots of documentaries and stuff like that. It's pretty cool that they have those civilization and everything. And talking about that, so like when we talk about cricket, we don't really associate Peru with cricket. So would you mind explaining what you were doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm one of the global master educators with the ICC, which means I run coaching courses as well as coach tutor courses. So the course that I was running in Peru was a level 1 tutor course. So we are essentially working with coaches, level 2 coaches who are going to be becoming level 1 tutors. So then they can go back into their countries and certify level 1 coaches. So we had coaches from Canada. We had no US this time, actually, but a lot of coaches from South America. Samuel Badri from Trinidad was there representing Cricket West Indies. So cricket, even in South America, is growing. It's growing in pockets in quite a few different countries. So it's nice to see some of these up and coming countries. It also makes you then realize what cricket is about. And we often forget the whole development side of things. And there's no money in these countries. They just do it purely out of passion. And it takes you back to your roots as to why you first got into cricket. What is that passion that brought you into the sport? So always nice to work with groups of coaches that don't necessarily come in for the money, but are actually there just to grow the sport in their country.
That's awesome. So you are responsible for the entire Americas, right? North and South Americas.
Correct. So yes and no. I'm based in the Americas, but I'm a global master educator, which means I run level 3s for the world. So I'm part of the global task force that runs level 3s across the globe.
Okay, that's awesome. So it's funny that you bring that up because around 10 years ago, I watched this documentary about introducing cricket in Brazil, and especially with the women's cricket over there.
Yeah.
And I was checking we have a women's World Cup coming up. So I was checking the qualification process and everything. And for Americas, I checked which teams were there competing for, and it was US, Canada, Argentina, and Brazil. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. They came a long way, right?
Yeah. So it's actually pretty interesting. I don't know if you know this story with Brazil or not. Typically, you'll find men's teams get most of the push. Men's teams are often the first team to get contracted. For Brazil, they realized very early on that the ladder to get to the top is a lot shorter for women's cricket than it is for their men's cricket. So they invested heavily in their women's program instead of their men's program. And so their women were actually contracted before their men. And their women's development happened a lot faster because the investment was there compared to their men's program.
That's awesome. Also, it's similar to what happened in Thailand too, right? Their women's team is really good.
Yeah.
And I believe they're they qualified for one World Cup or something
They
like that too,
did,
right?
yes. So
Yeah.
I actually had the chance to play them in a global qualifier in 2013, and
Hmm.
they're a very impressive team, and they've qualified to one World Cup, and I recently saw them in the Asia Cup Rising Stars.
Hmm.
You know, for a country where cricket is still very, it's not mainstream, it's not really on TV, it's quite incredible to see how well they've developed, and their women's team, it's pretty decent, actually.
Hmm. Yep, that's really cool. So talking about the World Cup, right? Uh, it's so before we talk about the World Cup, I wanted to talk about something really quickly about the
Sure.
Women's World Cup, right? So like 2 years ago, I was having this communication with my friend about like cricket in general, and he is also a big fan of cricket as well. And when I was trying to explain him that, like, I was also doing a bit of wordplay as well. I was telling him that the Women's World Cup is literally a different ball game because they have a different ball, and
Yeah.
he looked at me as if like I was telling him that sun is like square or something, right? So, so you are subject matter in this, expert in this. So I would love to hear from you. Like, what is the difference between men's cricket and women's cricket?
Oh, there's a lot different between men's cricket and women's cricket. Actually, it's one of my pet peeves when we compare the two and we expect women to perform in the same standards as the men because it really is a different sport altogether. You mentioned the one biggest difference, which is the ball. I don't actually have a women's cricket ball in front of me here, but this is a men's ball. The women's ball is smaller and lighter, and the reason for that is we've got smaller anatomy, so it is to make up for the adjustment of anatomy. But what that also means on the field is because it's lighter, you'll often see a lot more swing in women's cricket. The other aspect to women's cricket being different is the size of the field. It's a little bit smaller than the men's field, again, partly to make up for the change in anatomy. That's not to say that there aren't women who can clear men's boundary pretty easily, but it is to make up for some of those differences biologically between men and women. Um, because that biology aspect is so different, the way we coach the sport also varies. So it's funny that we're having this conversation because I recently joined this. Um, it's like a coaching platform called Stride, and it's literally for women and girls around the world to have access to coaching that's specific to women's cricket. And the reason why it's so important is, take pace bowling for example. Now, pace bowling biomechanics, you would assume, well, if it works for the men, it's going to work for the women, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Mm.
Biologically, our hips are wider. The way we're able to get up and over through our follow through is a little bit different. We're also a little bit more round arm than the men are. And again, that essentially, that biology dictates what's efficient for us and what's efficient for men's cricket. So there are a lot of subtle changes that you'll find. If you are a cricket fan and you're watching women's cricket, you also probably realize that, especially since the explosion of T20 cricket, women's cricket tends to be a lot more technical, a lot more technical shots than men's cricket these days, partly again because men's cricket is all about muscling the ball to the boundary. Whereas women's cricket still relies on technique to be able to hit the gaps, to be able to rotate the strike, to be able to tick that scorecard along. So there are a lot of changes between the two, and
Uh-huh.
we cannot compare the two the same way.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about the men's cricket and T20 cricket and IPL and all of that, but let's focus on women's cricket for now.
Yeah.
so so the interesting thing that you brought was that, like, I just want to share it quickly. Like, when I used to play cricket, like 15, 16 years ago, like I was way lighter, right? And after a few years, like maybe after 8 or 9 years, I had gained a lot of weight. So I was
Yeah.
trying to ball fast, but like, I was way off, right? And then I realized that how much your weight and like, everything plays when you are trying to ball fast, right? So yeah.
Yeah, the fitness is hand in hand, especially if you're
Mm,
a pace bowler. It's not really so much a weight factor as much as it is a strength factor. And so if you're
mhm,
muscular and you carry that weight, it's a little bit different than carrying fat because you need
mhm,
to be able to power that motion through. You need to be able to have the strength to be able to go through bowling, because let's face it, pace bowling is one of the most difficult things on the
Yeah.
body to do in cricket.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like there is one story that I can share really quickly. Again, like a lot of stories. So, like when I used to play gully cricket back home in Nepal, right? And like I used to bowl fast, or at least I used to try to bowl fast. And there was one guy who was playing, and he was like, "Why are you doing all that hard work? You can just bowl spin. You don't have to like run and that." And yeah, yeah, that's true too.
But then you can't feel the wind in your hair, and
Yeah.
you bounce the batter.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because like I got into cricket watching like Shoaib Akhtar and Braitley
Yeah.
ball, so that seemed to be cool for me. So that's why I was like doing all of that. So yeah, okay. Getting back to the cricket, right? Women's cricket in particular. So like we mentioned that like there's a different ball, and also I was reading this, and the cricket bat's handle, is it like, different, or is it like, same for women's cricket?
No, so the bat handle isn't different. Obviously, the shorter handle's a little bit easier to
Mhm,
use, but that's for men's cricket as well. You will see bats are a little bit lighter that women tend to use.
mhm,
So when you see men, using 211s and whatnot, women will want to that you want to try and be around the 27, 28, maybe 29 mark. Ideally, it's all about control. So
mhm,
you're going to build a strength for it, but you also want to be able to control it. You will also see traditionally trends between some of the Southeast Asian countries where some of their women's teams will be using heavier bats than
mhm,
you would see some of the girls from down under between New Zealand, even South Africa, Australia. They'll be a little bit lighter, but partly because, they're using the green nickels, they're using the kookaburras,
mhm,
slightly different makes, whereas the SGs and whatnot are just a little bit heavier from the subcontinent.
mhm. Okay, that's cool. So talking about the equipment itself, right? Like, especially with the associate cricket, and also like, uh, joining the cricket academy, right? Like they might not have women's cricket ball and then the equipment and everything, right? And also like, you have shared your story that like when you joined cricket academy, like you were the only woman in the like in the entire academy,
Yeah.
right? So do like how do they like, deal with those kind of things? Like,
Um, Associate cricket is tough. Women's cricket, women's associate cricket is even tougher. And, when we say we play out of passion, we really do play out of passion because we've got to deal with all of these. I don't want to call them restrictions necessarily, but limitations potentially. I played most of my cricket with a men's ball.
mhm,
And that's because I've played a lot of men's cricket before I actually played women's cricket. But even in women's cricket, a lot of our trainings happen with men's balls. And then we would
mhm,
go into competition for your national side, and all of a sudden you're playing with a women's ball. So now, as an off spinner, if you're gripping a men's ball compared to having to then grip a smaller ball, all of a sudden that release is going to change for you,
yeah,
right? The
mhm,
way you're gripping it's going to have a massive impact on that. So these are challenges that we deal with. We deal with in associate cricket, we deal in women's cricket. It's part and parcel of it. I mean, our boundaries don't get changed between men's and women's games because it's just the way it is, unless you are playing for the national side where the ICC is then involved and they make sure of boundary sizes.
mhm,
Um, Oftentimes, you will find a lot of women's clubs don't have the money for equipment, so they'll look for donations. A lot of girls will be sharing all the equipment. It's part and parcel of what development cricket looks like. And we've come a long way. I mean, there are, you take the US as a prime example of what cricket looks like when it's on the way up. You can take Nepal as an example as well. Their under 19 women's team qualified for the last World Cup. There are a lot of positives in associate cricket with women. There is more and more funding coming into it. It helps that the ICC now mandates, okay, this is how much is allocated to your women's program. I can't always say that amount goes towards women's cricket, but some countries do actually take that seriously and do allocate it towards women's cricket. But as as I said before, it comes down to the passion, and sometimes that passion out, will overpower all the challenges that you have to get through, and you'll go through it and you will deal with it, and You'll come out stronger at the end of it.
Mhm. Yeah, talking about passion and challenges, right? Like, uh, you have gone through all of that too, right? Like, you were born in Kenya, then you moved to Canada, and initially you hated cricket, right? Is that correct?
You've done a lot of research, haven't you? I did. You know what? I've always been very drawn to sports. So I was
Mhm,
born in Kenya, and I spent 11 years of my initial life in Kenya. And soccer was massive. Soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, was massive. So played that for school. I did 100, 200 meters as well. And if there was a sport there that I could play, I will play it. And so the one day there was, there were boys playing cricket at school, and I said, "Hey, I want to join this." And they said, "Well, girls don't play cricket." And for me, that was a major setback because I'm like, "What do you mean they don't play? I play all these other sports. Women play all these other sports. What do you mean by women don't play this sport?" So at that point, to me, the sport wasn't worth my time. And there was this deep seated hate of how rude for you to say women don't play this
mhm,
sport. Um, there were a lot of struggles along the way. I can't say I'm the only one who's faced them. Um, Even when I moved to Canada, I was 11. I didn't actually take on cricket until I was 15. And it's because of that BBC article on the English women's cricket team. So at that point, I joined my brother's academy in the city that I live in. And first couple of practices, I did nothing at the training because they would keep me on the side. And the second practice, they said to me, "Well, we just don't want you to get hurt. You're a girl. We want to make sure that you're safe." And at that point, I realized this was not going to be the place for me to train. It was not
mhm,
going to be the place for me to learn the sport. So thankfully, my parents were very hands-on with all of our sports. Growing up, it was something that was pushed. It was something that was promoted in the families. So then they found another academy all the way in Toronto. So that's about an hour away from where I live,
mhm,
about 70 kilometers away. And um, this academy was significantly different. It was a lot of West Indian players, and the coach was welcoming. The coach was able to take on the fact that I am new to the sport and still was able to then challenge me the way I needed to be. And I've got to hand it to my teammates because they could have very easily said to me, "Well, you're a girl. We just want to be a bit careful." But they didn't. They took me in as one of the teammates, and that's all I could have asked for because, yeah, oh, don't get me wrong, I went home with a lot of bruises. You know? For some reason, my parents thought I didn't need thigh pads when I started.
Wow.
So some
Yeah.
really, really nice bruises,
Mhm,
initially, but you know what? I've gotta be able to hold my own. They're bringing me in as a teammate. I've gotta, prove to myself, first of all, that I can belong, and then prove to them that I can hold my own. So very steep learning curve. Um, the challenges, I guess, were a little bit easier when your team backs you.
mhm,
And for me, that I couldn't have asked for better. It- there were times where I look back and sometimes I wonder how I survived because my second game ever, there was this tall, actually Guyanese bowler, and he bowled me a bouncer on the first ball right into my shoulder. I still remember I was down, and instead of checking in on the batter who was down, they tried to run me out.
mhm.
And I was like, "Hang on, I'm still in my crease." But that was one game I was very thankful to get out
Mhm.
'cause it might have required a stretcher off the field.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
you kind of learn from these experiences, and you learn to push yourself harder and train harder. And my first ever tour for Canada, it was our qualifiers in Toronto, and it was against US. It was US and Argentina and Canada, so just the three countries to begin with. Mm, Actually, no, Bermuda was there as well. Sorry. So
Mhm,
the four countries, and I was 18 at the time. I had trained very hard, and expecting to play, and I played just one game that whole tour. And I remember telling my coach on the phone, "This is the last time I'm gonna get benched. I'm gonna do everything I need to make sure that I'm good enough to be in every single playing 11 going forward." And so, you as a player, you're gonna have to put in the work. The challenges are part and parcel. And at the end of the day, if it was easy, everyone would do it, right?
mhm.
It's not
True,
meant
yeah.
to be easy.
Mhm. Yeah, so, like, when did you decide to, like, pursue career in cricket?
I don't think I ever decided to pursue a career in cricket. I
Mhm.
think it's happened as time has gone along.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I went to school for biological sciences. I don't do anything in that field anymore, but uh, I have to give credit to the time that I took to play in Australia. So I went there for a season. I was playing in Sydney. I was playing for Northern Districts. And at that time when I was playing cricket, the cricket was great, but it also then showed me all these options to outside my playing career. So I started coaching. There was coaching at the local YMCA. Started with my level one coaching certificate. They're not knowing where it's going to end up,
Uh-huh.
20 years down the road. And that just opened my eyes to how competitive the women's game really is in other parts of the world and also all the possibilities that are out there. Not to say that I was again planning to take any of them on, but
Uh-huh.
it just so happened that it started with a level one in Australia, eventually led to a level two through the Cricket West Indies, and you know, it all kind of fell into place on its own. And I have tried to leave the sport a few times, and something always brings me back in. So I'm assuming it's meant to be. Otherwise, why would I have the opportunities to come back in?
Mhm. So in Australia, right? Like when I like heard it about it in one of your interviews, I thought like they contracted you, they hired you to play for them, and it, the more I listened to it, it didn't sounded like that. Instead, like maybe you had to pay for to be a part of the club.
Yeah, it wasn't really paid. Actually, the club Northern Districts was very welcoming. They
Uh-huh.
hadn't paid me to be there, but they had welcomed me to be a part of that club.
Uh-huh.
Also, I was staying at one of my teammates' place, which was really helpful.
Uh-huh.
And it was a nice club community sort of setup. The other thing that I lucked out with that year was it's the same year that Australia was hosting the Women's World Cup.
Uh-huh.
So we had girls from England playing the season there, girls from New Zealand playing the season there. So I was lucky enough early on to get a game against Isha Guha, Susie Bates, Holly Colvin was playing with Northern Districts. So for someone coming out of Canada to have the exposure and the experiences to play against some of these players would never have happened had I just sat in Canada waiting for opportunities. I
Uh-huh.
had to create those opportunities.
So how was the process for you to like be part of that club?
Very simple, actually. It was just a matter of reaching out to clubs. So I was in talks with a couple of clubs at the time, most of them very welcoming to people who want to come on board and play. Um, and initially, they had also said, if you need a place to stay or anything, let us know. We'll speak to some of the club mates and whatnot and
Uh-huh.
see how we can get you aligned. So it's definitely, even for girls who are looking to do something like that now, I highly recommend it because there are a lot of opportunities out there. And that club culture is great in some of these places because
Uh-huh.
you're able to get help from your teammates. In fact, one of my teammates still happens to be one of my closest friends. She came down for my wedding. I've gone down for her wedding. So, these are the moments that you don't really expect, but you end up with at the end of these
Mhm.
experiences.
Yeah. So like over here we discuss a lot about like being able to play like club crickets like in test playing nations, right? Like it kind of like opens up a new horizon for you, right? Like and again like Susan Bates, I think she has most runs in the World Cup record or something like that, right?
Susie Bates, I mean, she didn't have a really good World Cup last time,
Hmm.
but she's one of New Zealand's best players. She's actually
Yeah.
retiring after this
Oh no.
coming World
Hmm.
Cup, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Okay. That's pretty cool. Okay. So um correct me if I'm wrong. Like, your coach was Dean Gilchrist, brother of Adam Gilchrist.
He was, yeah, so he was our head club coach at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, again, an experience that I would never have been able to get if I was in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky enough that I was there, lucky enough that the club itself was welcoming to the women's players joining the men's trainings because he mostly worked with the men. So we would have our women's trainings and then twice a week the men would be training. So we were welcome to join their trainings. again, I don't even know how to explain the experience because you look at the way he ran his fielding sessions or the way he communicated with players. It's very different from things that we were used to here in Canada. And
Mhm.
still, we are not really at the level of coaching that we should be at.
Mm. Talking about that, so like this was an individual effort to like reach out to clubs and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you think like associate level cricket boards should have that kind of like understanding or like contract or like with test playing nations or those clubs?
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, I think we don't do it nearly enough. Because, like I said, for me, to be able to be on top of my game in Canada is great.
Mhm.
But until I don't go outside and I see what competition really is, I don't understand how far off I am. So, for players who are actively playing right now, you might think you're the best because you can dominate your local cricket, but there's so much better out there. And if you're not exposed to that, if you're not actually around that sort of level of cricket, you're never going to be able to improve to it. You've got to play better competition to get better. And
Mhm.
that's as a player, but from a coaching perspective as well. You can take these coaching courses that are 3, 4, 5 days long, but that's not going to give you all the information that you need. If you were actually partnered as, let's say someone from a test playing nation could be mentoring you, mentor you for 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is, the amount of knowledge and the amount of experience you'll gain out of that will be incredible. And unfortunately, right now, we just don't have these partnerships. So let's talk about the Americas, right? Like you're based in the US. Now, the US under 19 boys or men's sent two teams to the Cricket West Indies under 19 Super 50 last year. This was right before the under 19 World Cup qualifiers. That's great exposure. It's a full member country. You're now being exposed to a lot of the players who will be playing for the West Indies under 19 side,
Mhm.
right? And potentially from there and up. Now, back in the day, Canada used to partner with Trinidad and Tobago. And so we had a lot of training tours in Trinidad. And that seems to have kind of fallen off recently. Mind your under 19 team now is back there. They're actually there now, which it's taken years to do that again. But that's the West Indies. So I played a season in Australia, and then right after I played a season in the West Indies. I was in the West Indies for 3 months, and it's still day and night in terms of difference of not just quality of cricket, quality of your grounds, your pitches, coaching. Everything is very, very different. So, my advice to players who are up and coming, players who want to take their cricket seriously, players who want to try and explore what there is in the world of sport, take a gap year if you need to in university, take 6 months off, go and find somewhere where you can play, whether it's in England, whether it's in New Zealand, whether it's in Australia. It will be an eye opener for you and you will come back a better cricketer.
Awesome. So then moving on to the World Cup, right? Like, so Australia has won 6 World Cups, and New Zealand, England, and West Indies they all have won one World Cup, right? Uh, what are your predictions for like the top four for this World Cup?
Top four. I've got to put Australia in there.
Hmm.
I have to put South Africa in there.
Hmm.
And India is up and coming in strides. I mean, they picked up the last 50 over World Cup. They've
Hmm.
been knocking on the door of the T20 World Cup for quite some time now. And my fourth, that's going to be an interesting one because I want to say New Zealand based on the last World Cup, but I feel like England's a bit of a stronger side in terms of consistency. Um, Mind you, Amelia Kerr is in the form of her life right now. So that might have a little bit of an impact, but she's only one player, and you need a
Hmm.
squad, you need a team. So I'm gonna have to go with England over New Zealand.
Cool. So one thing about the World Cup and ICC events that I I have kind of like issue with, right? Like the seeding is not like random or like or purely ranking based, right?
Yeah.
And even for this one too, it didn't seem to be like actual like a ranking wise seeding. Uh, do you think it should be more like, pure ranking or pure random seeding versus like, having seeding for like, purely for viewership?
I would like to see it more random, if I'm being completely honest. I know we
Hmm.
had the same issue with the Men's World Cup recently as well, and especially for the next stage when they were grouped, and it made no sense to then top your group before you got into the next step.
Hmm.
So I would love to see some random group placements. Again, I know a lot of it comes down to viewership, a lot of it comes down to financial implications, and the ICC obviously has to take that into account. But if we are looking at purely the sport and purely from a fairness perspective, love to see some randomized group placements.
Yeah, because like it seems almost certain like which two teams would like, go to next stage,
Yeah.
looking at the group stage, right? So yeah,
It's a bit
that's
predictable then, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so talking about this, right? Like moving on to associate side. This time around, we have two associate teams in this World Cup, and they are like Scotland and Netherlands.
Yeah.
What do you see chances for them in this World Cup?
I don't actually see them getting past the initial stages, if I'm being completely honest. Again, it's partly because there is a major gap in women's cricket between associates and full members. We
Hmm.
still need to try and bridge that gap. Um, it helps for Europe, especially to have both Scotland and the Netherlands in there. They're the two top sides. They're two associate countries that do a lot of development work right. So in that sense, I feel like it's well deserved. They're also two teams that have been consistently up at the top, and along with Ireland. I guess now Ireland is a full member, but that wasn't always the case, right?
Hmm.
So I think I want them to do well as an associate player, as a former associate player. I know when we played them at the global qualifiers, we played a couple of warm ups against Scotland and we lost both of them. There was very good talent in that team, but then you look at the likes of Netherlands and they're even better. And you've seen them improve, but that gap again is just so big between the associates and the full members. And we hear this discussion with men's cricket all the time. How do we try and bridge the gap? I mean, Nepal has been trying to do that. We're trying and trying to get more games against full member countries. They played the West Indies recently. They played three T20s against them. I think the more we can do that, the
Hmm.
easier it becomes to then close that gap. Partly because of what I said earlier. If you're not playing better competition, you're not going to get better. Money again comes it always comes down to money. So, you know how the men's have the Cricket World Cup League 2 structure,
Hmm.
right? Where you've got the top associates
Yeah.
or you've got the associates playing each
Hmm.
other consistently 3-year cycle, and then that eventually decides on qualifications. The women don't actually have that right now. And I know I'm talking about let's get series, as much game time as we can between associates and full members.
Hmm.
But before we even look at that, if we can have that sort of structure for women's cricket, I think it's going to improve a lot of our standards. And then eventually, in a few years, we can then look to okay, how many games can we get in against full members? Right now, it's just not enough games. We don't
Yeah.
play each other often enough. In fact, most regions will play their qualifiers every 2 years.
Hmm.
And then only the team that actually qualifies then goes on to play a global qualifier. There's nothing in between,
Hmm.
right? You've got to hand it to countries like the US that's now setting up their own tournaments and going out and playing in these tournaments. I know there's a series coming up between Scotland, Netherlands, and Bangladesh. So these initiatives help, but overall, we need more games. We have to be playing more cricket to improve our standards.
Sure. So talking about that, like I want to touch on a bit controversial topic. So do you think ICC revenue share should like be renegotiated by any chance, like for more funding for like associate crickets?
I thought you were going to ask me between men's cricket and women's cricket, but I think this is also a very good question. And in my opinion, I don't think it's controversial at all.
Hmm.
If ICC is in fact trying to be inclusive and is in fact trying to grow the game globally, at some point we have to realize growing the game requires money. And while I respect, the likes of BCCI bringing in a bulk of that income and the full members getting the first chunks of it, I do believe that the associates need more. They definitely need to have more money, not just to develop women's cricket, but to develop cricket in general. I mean, you look at your grassroots programs, all that takes
Hmm.
money. On top of that, you giving the same budget to the likes of a smaller country geographically
Hmm.
compared to a bigger country geographically. Take US and Canada, we're massive countries. So for us, flying from one part to the other part of the country ends up costing more than it would cost for me to go from Canada to England,
Hmm.
right? And those little things then have an impact on how you're going to develop the sport. It can't be cookie cutter for everyone. We've got to realize that there are limitations and advantages and disadvantages to different countries and different regions. I know we're talking about money, but to give you another example of that one size fits all doesn't work is recently the ICC launched Creo. I don't know if you've heard of Creo or not, but Creo is so it initially started as a women's initiative to grow the game.
Hmm.
It's meant to be fun cricket, not really technique heavy, but more just inclusive. Doesn't matter the level, it's more about engaging and getting more girls into the game. And they've now furthered that with a Creo grassroots community coach certification through their learning, their LMS
Hmm.
portfolio or portal. Now, the issue with that is you have sent everyone 10 kits. Now, 10 kits in Nepal, which is about this big, you can move it around. 10 kits in Canada, which is this big, I can't fly them from place
Yeah.
to place
Hmm.
to place. It would cost too much, right? So that's fine. That's equipment now we're talking. On top of that, if you compare Nepal women's cricket, it's a lot more developed than cricket in Canada is. So you have a lot more girls in Nepal playing hardball cricket already. They've been exposed to the sport for long enough. They have the basics and they're moving from there. In Canada, because it's not a grassroots sport yet, not a mainstream grassroots sport yet, we would need a lot more different types of resources to grow the same sport here than Nepal would. So while Creo might be great for Canada because grassroots is still very basic,
Hmm.
for Nepal, they're already too advanced for that, right? So that
Yeah.
one size fits all just doesn't work from the ICC, whether it's money, whether it's these projects. You've got to have more individualized approaches.
Hmm. Talking about that too, like so the way ICC used to share the revenue for associate teams were used to be like something like division, like let's say League Two gets like most
Mhm.
amount. Then if like League Two, League Three, right, division second or something, right, they used to get like lesser. So when Canada lost their ODI status, did they also like lost a part of the funding from ICC
Funding.
as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why losing that ODI status is a real setback for countries because you lose money and that money you need it. You need it to develop the sport.
Hmm.
You need it to contract your players. And if you don't contract your players and not playing often enough, then you struggle to get back up with your ODI status. So that I know Nepal is fighting to stay in
Hmm.
that table. Canada, which started at the top, is now really working their way down. So we have a lot of problems with that. I don't know about the rest, but I personally am stressed out about the fact that we could potentially lose ODI status again. And I know we worked very hard, Pupudu worked very hard to bring that ODI status back for us. We want to make sure that we hold on to it. So financial implications are massive when you don't have your ODI status. Not and then on top of that, when you don't have ODI status, you also don't get the number of games that you need to then
Hmm.
continue keeping up with your skills.
Yeah, and also one of the unique aspect of like challenges for Canada cricket is that you had mentioned in one of your podcasts as well that for 6 months you have to play indoors because of the weather, right? And it's mostly like this practicing and no real game play. Do you think it would be? I know it costs a lot of money for that and everything, but like Canada should be a country to like have a proper indoor stadium altogether, but they can play like cricket.
Okay, so that's a bit of a tough one. An indoor stadium sounds like a great dream.
Mhm.
But the reality is, cricket is not as feasible to make
Yeah.
indoors as it is
Hmm.
baseball, right?
Hmm.
Baseball, a little bit smaller, you can get away with an indoor, kind of like what we have in Toronto, where our stadium closes. Um, while I can't say an indoor stadium is feasible, partly because we're thinking about this way too late. Property prices have skyrocketed. Back in the day when prices were lower, we should have planned better. Because right now, we're one of the few associates that actually don't have a stadium at all. But what we can do is we can again partner with the likes of Cricket West Indies, which is a short flight.
Hmm.
You've got facilities in Barbados, you've got facilities in Trinidad. They've got so many options within the islands. You could go train in St. Kitts, wherever it is. That is possible with a squad. And financially, I know Cricket West Indies is willing to help Cricket Canada in that sense. It all comes down to whether you manage your money well, though. And I can't say that money is tight, but I also wouldn't say that there isn't money. It would be wrong to say that there isn't enough money to do that because there
Hmm.
is. I mean, every time you qualify for a World Cup, you're given money. Every time, every fiscal year, you're given more budget from the ICC. So if you budget right, and if the intention is, in fact, to then develop your program, then weather should not really be a limitation for you to send your players out to train when they need to.
Hmm.
My other concern is yes, we're indoors for X number of months, but we're not the only ones, right? You take some of the European countries and they're dealing with similar weather challenges. And so if they can then still stay relevant, training in their indoor spaces, why isn't Canada able to do it?
Mm.
And it comes
True.
down to the way you're coaching the sport indoors.
Hmm.
Yes, there are limitations. Yes, the conditions aren't quite the same. However, if you're able to structure your trainings and make sure that you've got enough constraint led game sense training, the mindset can still be worked on indoors. And that intensity can still be brought in indoors, but it comes down to the type of coaching that you have.
Cool. So talking about that coaching in particular, right? Like you have been around the world in different countries, associate countries and all. How do you think coaching is different in associate cricket versus like, test playing nations, especially in associate cricket where they are working full time somewhere else and like, practicing cricket, right?
Um, we are very different, not just between associate and full members, but I think we're very different based on the background of people. So while I can say, yes, associate cricket coaching wise is limited because, yeah, you might have your coaches have full time jobs outside of it. Mind you, now you don't see it as much, especially with men's cricket. A lot of the men's coaches are full time contracted.
Hmm.
Women's coaches, very different. They still have full time jobs outside of their coaching responsibilities with the women's programs, partly because the money continues to be an issue. But for me, based on some of the trends that I've observed from around the world, the way coaching is, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? The way coaching is put into place, the
Hmm.
way cricket is being taught, I guess, or coached, is very different in the subcontinent than it is in New Zealand or Australia. Um, you will find, and I'll start with those two to compare the way they want to coach the sport in the subcontinent has a lot to do with culturally the way respect works and boundaries work. And so a lot of it is very explicitly coached, where the coach will tell you exactly how you need to do things, exactly what you're expected of. Whereas you look at the way the sport is coached in New Zealand and Australia, there's a lot more freedom. The players, especially younger, they're given the freedom to learn the sport their way. And that is why you get some of the unorthodox players like Stephen Smith. Like you've got to allow for that individuality to come out. And
Mhm.
we've also got to understand that development takes time. I don't want to see a 14-year-old who can play like a 30-year-old because that doesn't happen often. You might get the one player who can do it, but
Mhm.
most of them are not going to be able to play like a
Yeah.
25, 26-year-old until they actually
Mhm.
get there because that development is supposed to take time, physically and mentally. Um, Recently, when I was at the Asia Cup, I had a conversation with the India A women's coach, and I asked him because it was very notable that the India A women's team was very far ahead compared to the other countries in that tournament, whether it's Nepal, whether Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, you name it. And my question to him was, your men's program's changed a lot over the last 10 years. You're consistently now winning World Cups or challenging the finals. Your women's team is starting to do that for the last 2 or 3 years. What's changed for you guys? And he said, well, we've had to do a deep dive into our coaching pathway. And we have completely revamped our coaching pathway and the way we coach the sport. So now the BCCI has redone their coaching programs and they're more aligned to what we're used to seeing in New Zealand and Australia,
Mm.
where it's player centric and not coach centric. So with associate cricket, or coming back to associate cricket, when you see the likes of Netherlands, when you see the likes of Scotland, um, the way they play, Namibia, the way they play or the brand of cricket that they play is coached significantly differently because their exposure is not really Southeast Asian based.
Mhm.
It's more homegrown, home roots based. Whereas countries like, um, well, Nepal's been lucky because they've had the likes of Pukuru there. Now they've got Stewart laws. So that's helped a lot with their development. But you look at the likes of Canada, even the US is now starting to come out on top, partly because they've changed a lot of their ways of how they approach the game. MLC's had a big impact in that. MLC, also minor league cricket, because they're seeing how other coaches are doing it. They're seeing it
Mhm.
and implementing it locally. It's one of our biggest challenges as an associate in Canada here that our coaching pathway is still very similar to what you expect in Southeast Asia because our players and our coaches are from there, whereas a lot of them are working with juniors that are raised here. And so that ideology now is completely different.
Mm.
It doesn't match
Mhm.
each other. You've got kids here who are learning differently. And I don't mean just sports, but learning in
Mhm.
general is
Yeah.
different. They're allowed to
Mhm.
think on their own. They're allowed to problem solve on their own. So now that clash is what we need to try and mitigate, which is where, coach education comes in very handy. But changing that mindset takes a lot of time.
In UTPod, we talk about films, sports, and culture. Please like and subscribe from wherever you guys are watching and help us grow. Thank you.
So now let's move on to the commentary side of your career as well. And I was always fascinated by commentary because like they don't really talk over each other, and I was like fascinated like how does that work out, why don't they talk over each other. And one thing I noticed was like they hold the mic so that person is speaking. But again, like I was watching this interview about this commentator, and he explained that there are like three particular roles for commentator. Right? One would call like ball by ball, like, hey, that's gone for four. And the other one would be expert who would explain, like, he played that shot and like this and that. And the third person, optional on like sometimes silent, would be statistician who would be like, that was the fifth, fourth, four, or whatever, right? So but in associate cricket, we sometimes see just two commentator or even one commentator and for entire innings. What has been your experience working as a commentator in like associate level crickets?
It is very hard. um, Unlike, the larger tournaments, like even NPL, for
Mhm.
example, you have you have short stints where you get a break, you can come off, someone comes in for you, and we're talking T20 cricket. In associate cricket, at the moment, everything is run by cricket clubs and
Mhm.
ICC TV. So cricket clubs has been hired by the ICC to broadcast or stream, I should say, all of these games. And oftentimes they will say budget is an issue. And because of that, they'll have two commentators for an entire 50 over game, which means you don't really get those breaks. It is literally the two of you for sometimes 100 overs if the game goes the full length, right? So it is very difficult. It also has other challenges like where you're actually going to be sitting, because oftentimes a lot of the associate nations don't have stadiums, so you're in tents, you're in temporary, structures. Um, you are exposed to the weather conditions. Some of these grounds don't really have bathroom facilities, so sometimes as a woman that could be very challenging.
Hmm.
Um, it's part and parcel of it, I guess. It is what it is until the situation gets better. That being said, while sharing the load on commentary might not get easier, there are now grounds around the associate circuit that offer you better facilities. You can take the TU as an example. You can take the new ground in Namibia as an example. So there are more structures coming up where you can see there's a bit of a stadium, the bathroom facilities are good, you can be indoors. The US has a couple of decent stadiums where you're indoors and you're not exposed to the weather conditions. So all of that makes a very big difference. But it is very taxing.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about the commentary, right? Like one thing I want to thank you and Lenny is that like you guys used to like read out messages and all of that, getting the audiences involved as well. So like, thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, no problem. It's always a joy working with Lenny, actually. And I mean, he's just so passionate, especially when it comes to Nepal cricket. So it makes it a lot easier when you're working with people that are passionate, because then you don't have to work as hard, especially through some of the dull moments in the game.
Yeah, the thing is that like when I'm watching cricket, like I'm always in Cricket Info, and I have tried to post my comments so many times in Cricket Info, and it has been published like a couple of times, but like it's it's a long process, right? Like I keep on trying, it never works. But like being able to reach out to commentators and like talk about like provide some stat or talk about
Yeah.
something, it's a really cool experience, and that only happens in associate cricket, I guess. Like I haven't seen it in anything else.
Yeah, it's engaging, isn't it? Because I guess with associate cricket, we have our own laptops, we are our own statisticians, so we
Yeah.
have access to our own social media to then be able to interact with the people who are watching. A little bit different when you get higher up, because you're not necessarily in the liberty to, first of all, even share your own personal social medias. So there are advantages, I guess, in that sense, because you're really able to engage with the crowd that's following the games.
Cool. So talking about that, right? So you were also in NPL, right? Like, how was your experience in NPL?
Um, when I left NPL season 1, I had told Paris that he and Nepal cricket have now made cricket very boring for me, because my standard is now that incredible vibe and atmosphere that I left at the TU. I mean, there is no comparison to that. So I have to be very honest. I'm very thankful to have had that opportunity, because it was absolutely incredible. The passion, the enthusiasm, the crowds came out in numbers every single day, and it's been hard to replicate that anywhere else, really. So, yeah, very thankful for that experience.
So how would you rank NPL as like in a T20 league overall and among associate nations?
So definitely one of the best in the associates. That is hands down. And I would say that even over the MLC, partly because you can't compete with that crowd factor.
Mhm.
That atmosphere is not replaceable anywhere else in the associate circuit at the moment. Compared to some of the other franchise leagues I've done, I would also rate it very highly, partly because the conditions are always decent for cricket. It's not one-sided for the batters, where games are getting to 240, 250. There is still that contest between batters and bowlers, which I know, I'm really picky about. Um, the overall organization of the tournament, not only for the players, but also for your spectators, all of that, when you look at all that put together, it's one of the top leagues in the world for me, especially.
So since you mentioned it, do you think in T20 leagues or tournaments there should be proper balance between bat and ball?
100%. Undoubtedly the most important thing in cricket for it to be cricket. And I understand, people want to see the boundaries and I'm all for it, but it's got to be earned. It cannot be handed to you because, the pitch is so flat that your bowlers then have no relevancy in the game whatsoever. If you can still hit your fours and sixes against good bowlers in decent conditions for both, more credit to you. But if you're hitting them on flat decks, you're getting to 240, 250, 260, and it's being chased down with an over to spare, it really makes me question, what is it in it, for a bowler anymore? Why would a
Yeah,
young kid growing up say, I want to become a bowler?
yeah. So so that's one of the justification that they have about batting dominated T20 league, that they say people wants to see fours and sixes. But do real cricket fan wants to see just fours and sixes? I don't think so.
With nostalgia and hype, eventually if you get the same thing too often, it's not
Mhm,
as exciting anymore.
mhm.
And so if you're only going to see fours and sixes, eventually you're like, oh yeah, there's another boundary. There's another six.
Mhm.
Right? So that hype it's eventually going to die because the commonality is going to kill the hype. I would
Yeah.
love to see
Mhm.
cricket that is actually competitive. And I don't mean competitive just by runs. I mean competitive as in a contest between the bowling side and the batting side in both innings. And because conditions are supposed to have an effect in cricket, let's face it, we're a sport where the conditions are supposed to matter. We're not baseball
Yeah.
where the conditions are pretty irrelevant.
Mhm. Yeah. So just like IPL, they also have WPL, right, for women's IPL. Do you think they at least needs to maintain that balance over there and not try to make it completely batting dominated on that?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. And I don't want to be called out for double standards. So let me word this very well. Yes, I think the standards are important even in the WPL. And I think that balance is important even in the WPL. Now, I know people like seeing big scores and I know people like seeing big shots. And like I said initially, women's game is different from the men's game, but that is not an issue with conditions. I think if women's cricket wants to continue um, gaining momentum and grabbing attention of the audience, then they have to work harder at the skills aspect of the game. It cannot be based on skewing playing conditions. And so, if we want to stay relevant, let's work on improving those skills. Let's try and get stronger. Let's try and make skills, just more consistently executed than being able to say, okay, well, it's a flat wicket. That's why we got the runs.
Cool. Awesome. So I want to touch base on two things, right? Talking about the cricket in general, people often don't realize that Canada and USA were two first teams to international teams to play cricket. And I believe they might just be two international teams to play sports altogether, right? And it continued and there was some interruption. Do you think they should bring back those tournaments Ashes series or something like that back for USA and Canada?
Um, so yes, US and Canada, first ever international cricket match. It's sad to think that we were the first ever international cricket game ever to now have two countries that are in governance issues as we see. And if we were the initial, think about the potential we had we stuck to it and had we developed the right way.
Hmm.
Um, to your question about, do you think we should have that rivalry competition? So we had the Audi Cup for quite some time. And the Audi Cup, was between US and Canada. It was
Hmm.
mostly the men. The women hadn't gotten around to playing the Audi Cup. I think the idea is nice. The issue is at the moment, one team is far ahead than the other. So it's becoming a bit of a non contest. Um, And for that to not be non-contest, Canada needs to pull up their socks and do better. The other issue is when you look at the Cricket World Cup League 2 schedule, and then you throw minor league in there, you throw major league in there, you throw potentially GT20, Super 60, and all the other franchise leagues, because a lot of the American players are playing in a lot of the franchise leagues. Scheduling then is becoming very hard. So not really an Audi Cup style, but North America Cup was introduced last year. And that was US, Canada, Bermuda, Bahamas, Cayman Islands. I think that's it. I don't think I'm missing anyone. So that happened for a year. It was supposed to happen this year. And then the US said, hang on, we just don't have money for this. And, maybe they don't have money for it, or maybe they've realized it's just not worth their time as a competition, whereas they
Mhm.
could be playing much better competition. Whatever the reason is, for there to be that Ashes style contest, I think you've got to have two teams that are consistently competitive with each other. Mind you, I mean, you look at the Ashes and England hasn't been competitive in a while. So, but there's always that hype with them, which I think we're lacking the hype too, along with the competition.
Yeah, so on that note, right, like one thing we notice all the time is that for associate teams, they always kind of seems to have like up and downs, right? Like Canada was one of the first team to qualify for the World Cup, right, as an associate nation, uh, back in like 1979. And they had been like, coming back to the World Cup and then like, getting out of the scene altogether for a few years and then like, regaining the ODI status and whatnot. And again, going back and forth, right? We saw the golden era of Kenyan cricket and
Yeah,
they were in semifinals.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. And then, again, they went away, right? So what do you think is causing that shift?
Governance. It all comes down to governance. And unfortunately, with a lot of associate cricket, it is very corrupt. I know we've seen our fair share of it in North America. Kenya, one of the only reasons why they got to a semifinal and are now completely out of it is because of governance issues, corruption. And until your organization, until the governance isn't strong, until there isn't a path and progression, you are not going to get stability. And oftentimes in associate cricket, you'll see a board will be in today, and that board will put in place, a structure of some sort, whatever the structure is. And then 2 years later, you get another board, and their first goal is to undo everything that this board has done over the last 2 years. And so then you have no continuity. The
Yeah.
idea is the pathway and the development should be as firm as it can be. The governance is to then work around that pathway to get to that goal. Unfortunately, with associate cricket, the goal is hardly ever cricket. And so you can't expect consistency and you can't expect development from associate cricket until you have the right people with the right ideas and the right objectives in place of governance.
Cool. So, talking about associate cricket and how to develop it, right? Like, I have a few crazy ideas, and I'd love to run by you what you think about them, right? So, one thing is that how about a tournament of all associate like teams, right? We have like all-star tournament
Mhm.
with like Africa 11, Americas and Oceania 11, Europe 11, and Asia 11, and they play like 3-day tournament or like test match possibly
Mhm.
if they allow it. What do you think about that?
So back in the day, we used to have 4-day cricket.
Yeah.
I don't know if Nepal was part of that back in the
No,
day.
no.
So it was Canada, uh, Ireland, Netherlands, Scotland, Kenya,
Afghanistan, Kenya with, I think.
Afghanistan. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we had regular, similar to the League Two games. We had
Uh-huh.
4-day games back in the day, and the idea was countries were looking to get to that test playing status. And so, out of all of that, two countries did, Ireland and Afghanistan. And, Afghanistan has done well over the years. Ireland just hasn't been able to keep up. And one of the issues with them getting the test status is a lot of their players who used to then play in the English setup now can't. They need other clearances to be able to do that. So while the 3-day concept sounds great, um, it's just not relevant at the moment to the way ICC sees associates. So
Mhm.
the ICC sees associates mostly in T20 cricket, and then unfortunately just as fillers in 50 over cricket. And I'm talking about the World Cup.
Mhm.
Until, and I know there's discussion now of the 2 tiers of Test cricket, and until a lot of the associates aren't put into those 2 tiers, I don't know if there is not only going to be backing or even benefit from having that 3-day competition. If it does in fact lead to an opportunity into that 2-tier system of Test cricket, where then we're saying, okay, we're going to get an opportunity to be a part of it, which again should mean more money, then totally worth it. But at
Mhm.
the moment, the T20 World Cup is every 2 years. So where are you going to prioritize your time? T20 cricket.
And
That's where the money's
yeah,
coming in every 2 years that you qualify.
and they
And
have like T20 leagues as well, right? So,
and they've got T20 leagues, right? So exactly, you can't even justify players that are up and coming, young ones, to
mm,
ask them to stay at the crease anymore, because to them it's like, well, hang on, but there's more money in T20 cricket. So, why would I do that? I'd make more money in a shorter format of the game, for a shorter period of time. So the whole concept of how we're going to develop associate cricket's it's changed completely compared to
mhm,
what we were pushing back in the day.
sure. So I'm talking about that. Like I have one more idea about it, right? Like not about associate cricket in general, but cricket in general, right? What do you think about? I know it's complicated. It's not going to be like easy, but something like a mixed cricket with mixed gender, with at least like 5 female players and like men's bowling from one end, women's bowling from the other end. What do you think about something like that? Like kind of like a long tennis, right?
Um, I've heard of this idea a few times, and my only concern is from a safety aspect. And I say that because we know the men hit the ball harder. Um, they bowl faster, and all of these things will then need to be taken into account. It's also one of the reasons why the IOC and now the ICC have implemented the transgender policy, right? And it's again because of that safety aspect and because of making sure that the sport is fair.
Mm,
I can't say it's not a possibility, but I think we would need to really think about how it's going to be structured to make sure that safety isn't a concern.
okay, cool. So for the last round, we have a rapid fire. But before we move on to rapid fire, I have one last question for you. So cricket is will be in the Olympics, LA 2028, right? Yeah,
28, yep.
28. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Are you excited about it?
I am very excited about it. I think it makes no sense that cricket is getting back into the Olympics after breakdancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, we're talking about a proper sport that's not in the Olympics. And I can understand, the limitations with the ground and the pitches and the timings and whatnot. But come on, we're
Mhm.
talking about the second most popular sport in the world after soccer to
Yeah.
not be in the Olympics, and breakdancing being in there before us. It's just mind blowing. The only disappointment I have is it's only 16s. And I
Mhm.
think if we want to be an Olympic sport, like other sports, you've got to have a few more teams in there. It's a global sport that you are now limiting to just 6 countries. I don't think that's fair.
Talking about the fairness, what do you think about the qualification process for the Olympics? I think they are shifting towards like the continental qualification instead of purely ranking, right? Like, what do you think
Yeah,
about
because
that?
at one point it was supposed to be New Zealand and instead of Australia, right?
Mhm.
I mean, listen, if that is, and I shouldn't say if, that is very similar to how some of the other sports qualify.
Mhm.
Right? So they will have like we have the Pan Am Games, for example, or Soccer has its own qualification process within the Americas. So if it matches those qualification processes, fine. There's some sort of structure there. I feel for countries like, well, regions like the West Indies, for example, they are a bunch of countries put together to represent a
Yeah.
region, and that doesn't work with the Olympics. So
Mhm.
then, just one of those islands gets to go forward when the others won't. I also feel I feel for countries like Scotland, for example, because I don't see any of their players getting selected by England, and
Mhm.
I don't necessarily see them going in over England. So, some of their top players miss out. They miss out as a whole. So there are obviously some holes in how that qualification is going to work. But if generally speaking, it matches similar qualification pathways to the other sports, then I think it's justified.
Awesome. So one of the story I heard was that for the Olympics, right? Like they showed Virat Kohli's Instagram account and say like he has so many followers, right? Like it's a popular game. Do you think like Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma should have their last dance in the Olympics, like return from the retirement and play for the India?
Uh, Listen, as an athlete, the Olympics is always the ultimate goal. But I think we also have to think of the bigger picture. And if
Mm,
we're at a point in our career where we know we're not going to be there in 2 more years, and we know there's up and coming talent that can do better than us, or at least hold their own against
mm,
us, then you've got to be the bigger person. It would be incredible for them to, have the ODI World Cup, the T20 World Cup, and the Olympics. Who doesn't want that? I think
mm.
even for myself, if Canada was host nation and we got Olympic rights, I would have come out of retirement just to play for the I mean, the Olympics is always the ultimate goal, but it takes a much bigger athlete and a much bigger person to say, you know what, I've called time on my career,
Mhm.
and it's time to pass the baton on to the next generation.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, first question. 15 runs needed of 6 balls. Would you rather be the batter on strike, the coach in the dugout, or commentator?
Ooh, commentator. Now, especially.
Okay. In one word, what is the most important trait a young cricketer needs to make it from the nets to the international stage?
Motivation.
Motivation. Cool. If you had a power to delete or change one ICC rule tomorrow, which one would go?
Oh my gosh. The the ball tampering rule.
Okay, so like you don't want ball tampering, or you want ball tampering to
Oh
happen?
no, I think listen, we've given everything to the batters. Let's give the bowlers that at least.
Okay, yeah.
No foreign objects, like,
Mhm,
just whatever you have on your body. But
mhm.
let's give them the ability to change the condition of the ball.
Cool. Give me one word that defines your feeling about cricket finally entering Olympics.
Finally. That's my word.
Okay. Which legendary bowler from the past would you love to face just once in their absolutely prime?
Hmm. Shane Warne.
Shane Warne. Okay. What is the purest form of cricket? T20, one day, or test?
Test.
If the ICC expanded tomorrow, which two associate sides would be at the top of your list for promotion?
USA and Scotland.
Okay, so this one kind of is my rule, ICC rule that I would like to like get rid of. Is the man cut or non-striker run out a perfectly legal tactical play, or is it against the spirit of the game?
It's perfect. It's perfectly legal. If the bowler cannot overstep, then the batter should not have the right to steal a few inches on that.
Okay, we can talk about that later.
You obviously don't agree.
I mean, like it depends, right? Like if the bowler is in his natural rhythm, right? Like if he's throwing the ball and then he sees like the runner like out of crease, then he can run out him, right? But if he like pauses and waits for the batter to get out of crease, then I think that should be that is against the spirit of cricket, and that should be
I think the non-striker should see where they're going.
Okay, we're gonna get back.
Let's be aware of the game.
Okay, so there was a recent incident, so that's why I have this question here. If a batter this is about the other rule.
Okay.
Okay, so if a batter collided or is obstructed by fielder or bowler, intentionally or unintentionally, and he was shot off the crease, should it be given out?
Yeah, that's a big spirit of cricket for me. I think if the fielding side was actually blocking their way, intentionally or unintentionally, I think you've got to hold the spirit of the game higher there, because they really were trying to make the ground and they couldn't. I know the rules say otherwise.
Okay, that's where we agree on. Okay, so it's a test match, and there's last wicket, and we need to bat all day to save it, and you're batting. If Rahul Dravid is off the table, who are you picking to stand out there in the middle with you? You can choose any batter in their prime.
If Rahul Dravid's out of it, that's my mentor there, my idol. Who am I picking? It's a tough one. That's a really tough question, actually. Ricky Ponting, maybe.
Ricky Ponting, awesome.
Or
All right.
Graham Smith.
That's a good one too. Awesome.
Jack
Callis is awesome too. Okay.
One though.
Last question. If your life story was turned into a movie tomorrow, what would be the title of the movie, say?
The ups and downs of cricket in my life. I don't know. I haven't really thought of it.
Do you want to take a second shot?
Yeah, I don't really know, actually.
Okay, then ups and downs.
Now you really have made me think about this. I might have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, awesome. Cool. All right, Monali, it was nice talking to you. And thank you for joining us for today.
Likewise. Thank you so much. A lot of fun.
Same here. All right.
And stay in your crease, yeah?